All right. Do you want me just to introduce myself?
Sure. Yeah.
Uh, so I am Brooke Size. I'm a licensed professional counselor and also a functional medicine practitioner. And I love being here to do these classes. Today is one that I have been looking forward to doing for a while. It's called Simplifying Supplements because in practice, I get a lot of questions about supplements. And I was joking before starting this class that maybe we need to change the name because I think it is actually a little bit hard to simplify supplements because it is a complicated area. And you'll kind of see we're going to talk through a lot of different aspects of supplements and how to know what you're buying and how to know what you need. But hopefully by the time we walk away from this class, you have a better sense of how to do that. So it feels a little simpler and not so confusing. A little bit on my practice, I can share a bit at the end, but I see individuals and couples for psychotherapy. I do that. SEP means that I'm a somatic experiencing practitioner, which is great for nervous system regulation and trauma work. It's kind of body-based counseling approach. I'm certified in functional medicine, and so I also see people for functional nutrition. And some people come for both and kind of the mind-body connection for gut health, anxiety, PTSD, hormone issues, as well as the couples counseling area. So jumping into the class, we will be going over supplement quality. Question. Who here has seen news articles or heard your medical provider or someone else's say that they're worthless, that supplements don't contain what they say they contain, or that your body just urinates it out and you can't use it? I've heard this a lot through the years from people, whether it was from a news article or from their, a health practitioner, a friend. And there's a reason those questions get asked because there are very poor quality products out there. But there are also beneficial products. And so we're going to talk about how do we know how do we know what the quality is of a supplement? We will also talk about the types of supplements because when we look at things and people say, oh, it's food based or it's natural, what does that mean? So we're going to talk about that. Foundational supplements. What are the things? Because ultimately, supplements are called supplements because they should be a supplement to a healthy diet and lifestyle. And so sometimes life happens and we're using a supplement for a period of time because we can't do our lifestyle strategies, or we're going through a hard time and we need some extra support for the stressors that are present. Maybe we're traveling, we can't really eat the way that we might eat at home, so we're going to take some extra supplementation to support our immune system while we travel or things like that. And so they're useful, right, in lieu of some diet and lifestyle factors that we might want to include. But in the long run, the idea with supplements is that they're supplementing whatever we're eating and what our lifestyle is like. And so there are some, when I say foundational supplements, there are some nutrients that in our modern lifestyle and diet, they're hard to get through food or through our lifestyle, like vitamin D. And so we'll talk through those that typically are the ones that I would say across the board, almost everybody could consider supplementing with these. They're relevant for most of the population. Then there are some supplements that we kind of go to the next level of. These are maybe more commonly needed. I didn't put that here in the list, but we can talk about that. What else is kind of more commonly needed along with the foundational supplements, even though I wouldn't put them under foundational. And then we can talk about supplements for common health conditions and symptoms. So, diabetes is really prevalent, or blood sugar dysregulation. Stress is really prevalent, problems with sleep. So I'm going to go through some of those things so that you can see here are some of the options we would think about for some common health challenges that people encounter. As we start to think about buying a supplement, here are some of the questions I know that I think about when I'm deciding what recommendations I'm going to provide for a client or what I'm going to get for myself or my family. The first one, in terms of quality, is that supplement GMP certified? And GMP stands for Good Manufacturing Practices. It may also, you may see the acronym CGMP, which is also the same. If you see pharmaceutical grade on a bottle, and I'll say more about that here in a little bit, it is it doesn't mean much on a label, but it might mean that it's GMP certified, and then you need to go see if that product actually is. I'll get into more about GMP, but just these are some of the things to think about. What form are the nutrients in? And this is where it gets tricky because we may not know what the forms mean, right? You may see on like a protein bar that it says, you know, alpha lipoic acid, or it says alpha tocopherol, which is vitamin E. And that we may not know what that means, or what is vitamin D2 versus vitamin D3 and which one is better. And so a lot of that just takes kind of education or trusted resources. So that could be a practitioner that you go to. It could be a health practitioner online who you've vetted and you feel comfortable following. I don't necessarily have time to do all the research because I'm busy being a practitioner. And so I have some physicians or professionals who I, over the years, have come to trust that they do really good research, right? Or bloggers that are doing really good research. They're like health bloggers that know what they're doing. And so then I will kind of go to see what they're recommending in their book or whatever, right? So we've got the right vetted resources to find the answer for what we need. And that's okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about forms of nutrients, but that is a whole world that would actually make this a very long, weekend-long class. But it is something that's important to figure out with a supplement. Do the amounts fit the research to support the reason one is taking them? Sometimes we hear that a certain nutrient is good for some health concern we have, and we go pick it up at the store, but actually the research says we need to be taking like 2,000 milligrams of that, and the bottle we got has 200 milligrams. It may not really be a therapeutic dose for what we're trying to get out of it. And so again, we want to go back and have a resource to figure out what we need from that product. There are some really good reference books for this. Prescription for Nutritional Healing is a great one. You can look up a lot of health conditions in there and it will give you specific information about how much to take. Another one is, I believe it's called Encyclopedia of Nutritional Supplements. That's a great one too, because you can look up vitamin D and then it goes through different health concerns and how much you want to take based on research on what it does for that health condition. So that's a good place also to find some answers there. What were the compounds derived from? This is, I usually look at the form, and oftentimes if we know that it's a good form and you don't have a lot of allergies or sensitivities, you may be okay if you don't know what it's derived from, as long as it is GMP certified and it's a good product. But for example, people with histamine intolerance or mast cell issues, they have a lot of allergies. They may be bothered by certain types of vitamin C that are derived from one area versus another, from one type of food versus another. So there may be areas in there that gets a little more individualized, and you might need some support to kind of figure that out if you feel like you're reacting or having problems with different supplements. But for the most part, if we go with the GMP certified and what form it's in, we're probably going to get a decent product. What are the added ingredients in the supplement? This is a big one because when you look at the nutrition label, you will see on the box of the label what the active nutrients are that are in that product. But then you have to look below the label to see additional ingredients or added ingredients and make sure that it's pretty clean, because there are fillers added into capsules to kind of fill up the extra space from how much room is needed after the nutrients are in there. And you want to make sure that there's nothing that's problematic for you, or sometimes they put color in there. So like artificial colors, usually not sweeteners if it's in a capsule, although if it's like a chewable, there may be artificial sweeteners. And so depending on what you're trying to avoid, just make sure to read the added ingredients and double check that that's clean of anything that you wouldn't want in there. Has the supplement been properly handled and stored by the seller? So this is one that comes up with ordering from, certain stores that do make sure that they are keeping things cold that should be cold, making sure like probiotics don't get super hot in the summer when they're being shipped. Amazon, that's a tricky one because when we buy supplements off of Amazon, we don't really know how it's being handled. So usually ordering from like a dispensary or a retailer that is mindful of this, and that may just be asking questions of that retailer or looking into their practices a little bit more. So kind of trusting how it's been handled since it was manufactured. And then is it free of any allergens you're wishing to avoid? And that is pretty individual. But if you're allergic to anything, you want to make sure that that product doesn't have that in it. So supplement quality, I mentioned good manufacturing practices. There are different third-party certified, third-party certifications that we could look for on a product. But as a general overview, good manufacturing practices is a good one to look for on the company that you're getting that supplement from. It was established by the FDA. And basically, supplements or nutraceuticals manufacturers are audited 1 to 2 times per year by a third-party organization. And this makes sure that they are compliant with FDA standards and manufacturing practices. So the auditors will inspect the facilities for systems that test product purity and quality. They will have specifications for the finished products, cleanliness of facilities, laboratory controls, proper and accurate documentation, equipment control, and any deviations in operation. And the FDA does require all manufacturers to adhere to GMP regulations, but not all supplement manufacturers are GMP certified. And so they have to go through a comprehensive audit conducted by a third-party organization to disclose these processes and procedures. And so the takeaway here is that it's not a product doesn't get GMP certified, just the manufacturer does. So it's more about knowing the brand. Like, is that manufacturer, like Now brand, right? Now is a really common brand that's in a lot of stores. It is GMP certified, but you may not see that. I think Now actually says like from a GMP certified manufacturer. That's what you would look for. And it might be in really small print on the bottle, but it also may not. And so it can be very confusing because it may not say, you may not be able to tell. You may have to look on the website of that company and see if they are GMP certified. So that is kind of a good place to start, though, is the company that manufactures the supplement I want to buy GMP certified? And this is because the FDA doesn't issue a GMP certification or seal to display on the package. It's actually illegal. If a product is manufactured, though, they can disclose that information and put that little line on the product. There are some supplement manufacturers that add additional claims to their labels to like help kind of differentiate or make their products stick out. And if it is backed by a third-party organization, so this would be USDA organic, it might say non-GMO project verified. Those are third-party organizations, which you can trust that claim because it is a third-party certification. But there are claims that don't have any agreed upon enforceable definition, including pharmaceutical grade. And so that is one, I hear that a lot. Like people say, is it a pharmaceutical grade supplement? And I know what they mean by the question. It means most likely that's often used to mean, is it GMP certified? Is there oversight on how this is being manufactured and what's in this product, right? Is it regulated by the FDA? And not regulated, but is it certified by this part of this certification from the FDA? And it's not, pharmaceutical grade is not regulated by the FDA, and nor does it mean that a supplement making this claim is endorsed or approved by the FDA. And so it may be that the brand that says pharmaceutical grade is above and beyond what is required for GMP. So it could be a very, very good product, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it is or not. So that's just something to dig into a little further if you see that on a product and find out for sure. Then past GMP certification, there are a lot of companies that go a step further by requiring certificates of analysis on finished product. They might require testing for authentication, purity, contamination, adulteration. Many companies ask for heavy metal testing and look for manufacturers to meet established guidelines from different, like California Proposition 65 or the United States Pharmacopoeia. There's the American Herbal Products Association. So there's other like stricter guidelines that they might also go by. And they might even some retailers will perform independent lab testing on supplements to ensure that potencies and quality are what is being stated on the label. Natural Grocers is an example of this. They do extra and additional kind of quality checks on the products that they have on the shelf. I'm not sure about like Whole Foods or Sprouts or some of the other places, but that is something that some retailers or companies will do. They might also be really mindful about not carrying, certain products that have been found to be harmful, like CoQ10 that's made from GMO raw material has been found to be potentially problematic. So they may not allow that on the shelf or, in their online store. They might ensure that vitamin C and B are never sourced from petroleum, or that things aren't contaminated with dangerous pesticides. So the takeaway on this is that GMP is your base level like question. It will say this has like what it's been vetted enough that it's probably a pretty good option. And then you can also buy from a retailer or buy from a company that's taking some of these extra steps, but it does require asking some questions and doing a bit of research on what those things are that they're doing and making sure it fits your preferences for feeling safe with the supplements you take. Let's talk about different types of supplements. So these are all different types of supplements that you might find on a shelf. There are 7 categories of nutrients used in supplement manufacture. And so we're going to go through all of these. Natural means that the nutrients these nutrients come from vegetable, mineral, or animal sources that undergo little or no processing. And so they retain their basic nutritional integrity as designed by nature. Some natural supplements would include alfalfa, dolomite, fish liver oil, bee pollen, yeast, garlic, desiccated liver, kelp, and most herbal products are also natural. This isn't a regulated word though. So just know that as I go through these, you might see this on a bottle and it doesn't necessarily mean that it fits this category. But if we're referring to types of supplements, like when it comes down to it, on the back end, like for a nutritionist, we'll be looking at like, what is that product? And this is how we would categorize them. So hopefully that makes sense. Natural source is a category that includes products which undergo a significant amount of processing or refining, but they are still obtained from vegetable, mineral, or animal sources, right? So they're natural sourced, but they've been processed to some degree. Examples of this is when you buy vitamin A or D and it says it's from fish liver oil. It's been processed to extract just that D3, but it's derived from a food source, a natural source. Vitamin E from soybean oil, lecithin, EPA, which is an omega-3 fatty acid, natural beta carotene, digestive enzymes, protein powders, and bioflavonoids are all examples of natural sourced nutrients. Then we have nature identical synthetic. And this category includes nutrients which are lab manufactured, but they are believed to be identical in molecular structure and activity in the body to the same nutrients as they occur in nature. So nature identical synthetic nutrients, they're manufactured usually because the cost or the difficulty of extracting the same nutrients from natural sources would make them prohibitively expensive. So we wouldn't have them very available for, a chunk of the population, or very scarce. And so nature identical nutrients can be more affordable and more available. Examples of this are vitamin C and B vitamins. And then we have strictly synthetic. And this category is going to include nutrients which are lab manufactured and are in some way dissimilar to the same nutrients as they occur in nature. So this is like usually where I look at the forms of the nutrients and say, usually I will avoid using strictly synthetic pretty much across the board. Because it's dissimilar to what would be occurring in nature and what our body would recognize and easily be able to use. So in some cases, though, the nutrients have what is known as optical activity, which means that the synthetic vitamin has the same chemical constituents as the natural vitamin, but the shape is different. And so it's kind of like just like our hands have the same components, 4 fingers, 1 thumb, 1 palm, etc. They're mirror images of each other. And this is the same for synthetic nutrients. So some enzymes may work this way. If it's hard to put a left glove onto your right hand, it's difficult for an enzyme to work with a vitamin that's bent the wrong way, would be an example of what happens with synthetic. So again, typically this is the category that I would not recommend as much or ever. I'm trying to think of a time where I've recommended something that is synthetic, but it doesn't typically happen. Okay, food cultured. This category describes a process of growing nutrients in yeast, and the raw materials, minerals, and some synthetic nutrients, they get added to Saccharomyces cerevisiae yeast suspensions, which they are presumably then consumed by the yeast and concentrated within the yeast cells. And then the yeast combines those individual nutrients into larger molecules. That yeast is harvested, ruptured, and made into a vitamin supplement. Theory here is that the yeast contains the nutrients it's fed, and then it's in a whole food type complex that makes the nutrients more readily available for the body. They're lower potency, so if you're looking for like a really high dose of vitamin C, taking a food cultured vitamin C isn't going to give you as much vitamin C. They're oftentimes, once they're made into the supplement, they're put into a whole food base to increase the amount of vitamins in the product. And sometimes they are combined with synthetic vitamins to increase the potency. So you just need to read the label to kind of see if that's the case or not. A couple brands that I should say, even though the quantity of the nutrient is less, sometimes the level of absorption is much higher. And so you may not need as much of that nutrient for the amount you're trying to absorb. Examples of food cultured Megafood and New Chapter are 2 good brand examples of food cultured products that are out on shelves in a lot of health food stores. Food based. So there are, 2 types of food based supplements. One kind is made by enzymatically reacting synthetic and natural vitamins with extracts that contain vegetable proteins, and then making this mixture into supplements. Sometimes it's called food cultured, but it's not really accurate because the nutrients aren't grown into a whole food like the yeast suspensions that we just talked about. So that's one way. The other way is for the mixtures of natural and synthetic nutrients to be blended into a whole food or an herbal base. And then generally the whole food is spirulina or brewer's yeast. And so that is more of the food-based supplement. And I promise I will say, as we go into this last one, that we're going through the more complicated aspects of supplements first. And I realized as I was putting this class together that, wow, we could really do like a pretty long talk on quality, types of supplements, how to know what we're getting. There's really a lot to talk about there. So I'm trying to kind of give you some of the initial things to think about. And if anything, you may not know the answers, but at least you'll know what to ask of the retailer, or to look up online before you go buy that product. So the last one, bacterial fermentation, describes supplements that are produced by genetically altering bacteria. So once the bacteria is genetically altered, the nutrient is produced as a byproduct of that bacteria's metabolism. Amino acids are made this way, produced this way, CoQ10, melatonin. And so those would be examples of bacterial fermentation. Natural and food-grown vitamins are usually low potency, so that's something to keep in mind. Along with that, we talked about food cultured. So they might add a synthetic form. So that's another thing to know, is that one product may have a couple different types of these nutrients in it. So if you're trying to get a certain type, you've got to read the label and identify what they are. But then there's some brands that like you just know because of that brand, like New Chapter, Mega Food, that I believe, don't quote me because I have to look this up with the company, but I believe they're entirely food cultured. I'm just not 100% sure on that. But I think a lot of their products are totally food cultured. All right, so let's get into how do we decide like what nutrients we need? So foundational supplements, like I mentioned earlier, these are things that may be hard to get even in a healthy diet, at least in our part of the world, in our country. So the first one I'll talk about, and then I'm going to go through these in a little more depth, but I'll mention them here. Omega-3s, particularly DHA and EPA, especially in this part of the country. We're landlocked, right? To get omega-3s, EPA and DHA, those fatty acids, we usually get those through seafood is like a big one. We get them in some other things, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But and it needs to be wild caught. And so oftentimes people aren't getting enough of those, and they're really important for a lot of things. Vitamin D3 is a big one. When I'm doing labs, I would say, I don't know, somewhere around 90% of the time, people are low in vitamin D3, or they're deficient, or they're on the low end of normal. So every once in a while I see normal vitamin D, but usually they've been supplementing. I think I've only once seen it normal when someone wasn't supplementing. So this is related to our genetics and how much time we're out in the sun, and we'll get into that a little more. Magnesium, our soil's getting more depleted in magnesium, so that is one that a lot of people aren't getting through a healthy diet. And also probiotics, which we can get through food, and we'll get into that. But a lot of the population is not eating the foods that would have those. Then the next things I would say that are like not necessarily on that initial list, but they would be afterthoughts that a lot of people may need some extra support with, is a multivitamin with B vitamins particularly, or at least just a B complex, and vitamin K2. The reason I put K2 on here is that if somebody is aiming to eat vegetables and get greens, then they're getting K1. K2 is found in liver, like animal liver basically is high in K2 from a lot of different animals. Egg yolk, butter, and then soft and hard cheeses. I would say probably soft and hard cheeses are the most commonly eaten things that might have K2, but not all cheeses are going to be very high in K2. And there are people who don't eat eggs. A lot of people don't really want to eat liver. And that's an animal sourced nutrient, K2 is. And so for that one, we may need to supplement that. It's really important for bone health, in particular, as well as other functions in the body. So that may be one to supplement. Okay, let's talk about omega-3s first. Basically, the big conversation here is that in our standard American diet, we get a lot of 6s and not a lot of 3s. And omega-3s and omega-6s work very synergistically. Omega-6s our body uses to make prostaglandins that cause inflammation, that promote inflammation. Omega-3s our body uses to make prostaglandins that calm down or stop inflammation. We want about a 1-to-1 ratio of 3s to 6s, ideally. And the standard American diet causes us to have about a 1 to 15, maybe up to 30 of 3 to 6. So we're getting way more 6s than 3s, which means our diet is inflammatory. We're eating things that make our body really good at promoting inflammation, but not so good at calming it down. And 6s, omega-6s, we get in whole foods also. We do need some 6s. We get them in nuts, in grains, in meats. And 3s, we more get in, as I mentioned, seafood. We can get some 3s in grass-fed beef and some grass-fed pastured meats. A lot of our meats are not grass-fed, and so we're not necessarily getting that in those foods. We also can get some types of omega-3, which are ALA, GLA, in plant foods. ALA is one that we get in like flax oil, chia seed, and it converts at a very small level to EPA and very minimal to DHA. And it's not typically going to provide enough EPA and DHA for our body. So if you're vegan or vegetarian, there are algae-based supplements out there that are EPA, DHA derived from algae. So I would definitely recommend taking that because those are really critical nutrients for your brain health. And then you can add on like flax and hemp and some of those things to get some additional omega-3s in other forms. And so the goal with food is to get enough EPA, DHA, we usually need to eat 3 to 4 servings of wild-caught fish, wild-caught seafood per week. It can actually be cheaper to buy a fish oil supplement than to buy wild-caught seafood in Kansas or Missouri. And so it may be beneficial to just take fish oil and then eat fish when you can. Also with fish, there's concerns about mercury and things like that. So, to some degree, we want to pick what sort of wild-caught fish we're eating on a regular basis in a mindful way. And some of the things, here's a few things here that EPA and DHA do in the body. We talked about inflammation, and inflammation is something that happens throughout every system in our body. And so it's pretty important for everything. It also, EPA and DHA help support a healthy body weight and composition. They help with blood sugar regulation because they help our cells listen to the messages that are sent by insulin to help regulate blood sugar. And you can see here, there are so many things that omega-3s do between brain development all the way from fetal development into infancy. It's an essential component of breast milk, helps with a healthy pregnancy. It's needed for brain development. So it's really important that infants, toddlers, all the way up are getting that. Helps with vision, helps with attention, behavior, mood, really important for our brain. DHA, big component of brain development. EPA, really important for regulating mood. So if you're working on mood, you can take like a high EPA omega-3 supplement. Can help with healthy cholesterol, increasing HDL, joint support. So lots there. Then moving on to vitamin D. There are vitamin D receptors in every tissue and cell in the human body. Typically, we want our blood levels to be between 40 to 60 nanograms per milliliter. And so if you're getting your vitamin D tested, if it's in that range, then you're in a pretty optimal range. There are reasons we might want to see it higher. There's some practitioners that like to see it higher for people with autoimmunity. So there may be reasons to have it a bit higher, but 40 to 60 is kind of considered the functional range for vitamin D. It supports brain function and development, regulates over 1,000 different genes. So it's important for healthy gene expression, supports our immune system, our healthy immune response, making sure that our immune system's not overreacting or underreacting. So it's regulating to the immune system. I have poison ivy rash right now, so healthy vitamin D is important, right? Because it will help not the overreaction of like a huge allergic response, but which it feels like I'm getting a little bit more of an allergic response because I'm very allergic, but hopefully taking my vitamin D has helped it not be completely out of control. But will also help the immune system fight it, right? Because it's an allergy. It needs to work through that and process that oil. It helps with blood sugar, important for bone health, balance, muscle strength, respiratory health, breast and prostate health, might help slow aging or at least promote healthy aging, joints, and healthy fertility and pregnancy. It's a big one. It acts as a hormone in the body. And so it is really necessary for a lot of things. And the thing with vitamin D is that in order to get enough of it, we need to be outside between the hours of 10 and 3 during the summertime, at least in this part of the world, with most of our skin exposed. And we need to be out there without any UVB protection because we get it through UVB rays for half the amount of time it takes us to burn, meaning we get a little touch of sun. And then we can't wash with soap for 24 to 48 hours because it'll wash off some of the oils that are synthesizing that vitamin D, so that we absorb it and we can use it. And if you think about how we lived before we had like soap and showers and all of the modern convenience, we weren't washing with soap, right? There might be like a rinse off in the river or something. There were probably days of not necessarily bathing. And now with the way that we live, right, we bathe, we use soap, we're covered up more when we're outside. And I always throw in this disclaimer that I'm not going to promote or say go outside with no sunscreen and spend a bunch of time out there because there's concerns there as well, right? But also a lot of our modern lifestyle won't allow us to absorb the vitamin D that we would get from the sun. So taking it is typically something that most people need to do because of that. We don't get a lot of vitamin D from food. Magnesium. So surprisingly, studies looking into magnesium levels over time have found that many people in developed countries were commonly deficient, but that the deficiency was not serious in developing or poor countries, which indicates that refining foods can pose several problems for our magnesium intake. And what has been continuing research, we're seeing that the magnesium content of our soil has been declining since about 1950. And this is due to increased yields, right? Like using the same soil for the same crop over and over and over again depletes the soil of nutrients. That's why farms that do like crop rotation and things like that and they regenerate the soil with nutrients is a really good practice. Potassium-based fertilizers, and then just some other practices in refining foods have led to less healthy soil and less nutritious food. So we found that the magnesium content of vegetables has declined 20 to 30%. Additionally, something to note is that the phosphoric acid in most cola drinks, along with phosphates in baking powder, processed meats and cheeses, and other processed foods, bind with magnesium and block its absorption. So that can lead to lower magnesium as well. Magnesium is considered to be the calming mineral. It is needed to relax our muscle cells, and just like calcium contracts our muscle cells, magnesium relaxes, so they work really synergistically in our muscles. So for tight muscles, you may have heard of using magnesium oil or taking a magnesium Epsom salt bath, right? And that is partly why that can help those muscle cells relax. It's also a cofactor in more than 300 enzyme reactions, and it's one of the most overlooked minerals probably when it comes to health outcomes. It's a really important one due to, you can see, 300 enzyme reactions. And just to put that in perspective, vitamin C is a cofactor for about 8 reactions. So magnesium's really involved in a lot. Let's see. Oh, it's needed for vitamin D. Vitamin D has to be activated by enzymes to support bone health, and magnesium is crucial to basically turn on vitamin D, and so that you can use it properly. Supports muscle, joint, and back comfort. It also is helpful for healthy nerves and helping nerves settle down, which is why it's considered to be calming. I will say this picture here, this is one that you can get at stores. Cal brand, they make magnesium glycinate. There's lots of other good brands, but glycine is calming. And so if you want to use magnesium to see if it helps you with sleep, this is a good option, or just for a healthy mood. And it's also giving you a really a really bioavailable form of magnesium that's well absorbed, so that you get all those other benefits that we get from magnesium. Probiotics. These are all things that probiotics do. They support a healthy body composition, metabolism, appetite. I know I've done gut-brain connection classes. I love that topic. And there is so much research on what the little bugs living in our gut do to affect our mood, to affect our brain function, our memory, cognition, to affect our sleep, to affect our metabolism. There's a connection between our gut and our skin, our gut and our hormones. And in practice, I see this a lot because I'll get like a hormone panel and I'll get a stool test. And sometimes we can see, for example, why someone's estrogen is high. Their estrogen is high and they're having symptoms. And we can see in the gut what's happening to cause high estrogen. And so it's pretty cool. And so takeaway there is that probiotics are going to support gut health, and gut health impacts a lot of the rest of the body. This I pretty much went over just now. The only things I forgot to mention are that our Western lifestyle and diet has really disrupted our microbiomes quite a bit if we're not taking extra steps to support our microbiome. And this would be eating fermented foods. Those were a part of traditional diets for thousands of years, and we've kind of dropped them. They've come back as we've gotten more research on the importance of probiotics. And so this is things like sauerkraut, kefir, cultured yogurt, kombucha. So there's some different fermented or cultured foods you can include. And if you're doing that and you're in pretty good health, then you may not need to take a probiotic supplement. Getting all of that fermented food is great. There are different types of strains. And so if you're, have had to take antibiotics, for example, and you're kind of working on building your gut back up, you probably want to take a supplement for a while that has some human strains in it. And then you can get back on your fermented foods. Depending on what's going on, there's lots of different options for probiotics, but making sure we're doing some sort of food or supplement to support our gut microbiome is good. In choosing a probiotic, look for a multi-strain probiotic or probiotic-rich fermented foods that have the strains or the type of support you want. Make sure you pick up something you'll remember to take. Sometimes people get refrigerated items that they just forget to take. So there are lots of shelf-stable options out there that you could put like with your, say, B complex to take in the morning or something like that. There are specific strains that are better for like women. So they might be for vaginal health. There may be some that are better for men. There may be some studied for children, adults, seniors, maybe things that help with IBS or strains that help with like traveler's diarrhea or things like that. There's all kinds of stuff out there. So depending on what you're wanting to do, you might want to look for certain strains that are best for those things. And then if you're just getting overall support, then I would just get a multi-strain product, something that's like in the range of 20 to 50 or even 100 billion. And then you can always add on prebiotics, which give you more bang for your buck. So you could take a lower dose probiotic or just eat fermented foods and then eat or take prebiotics, which feed that bacteria. And so it populates inside. Inulin, FOS, and resistant starch are 3 different prebiotics you can find at the store. You also can see these foods here. You can just eat these foods in abundance, right? Garlic, leeks, onions, artichokes, asparagus, fruits, veggies, whole grains, legumes, starchy veggies. Some things like white rice, white potatoes, if you cook them and cool them, then you can reheat them as many times as you need, and the resistant starch is more present in that food. So you can get that through food, or you can supplement. Then we have, I'm going to go through this kind of quick. We have 9 minutes left. And so I'll kind of speed through these, but these are then getting into some supplements for specific health concerns. So if you're trying to regulate blood sugar, fish oil, magnesium, vitamin D are a good start. If you're working to support insulin function, chromium, milk thistle, NAC, biotin. If your blood sugar's been high for a long time, so this is what happens with prediabetes, diabetes, alpha lipoic acid, vitamin C, and green tea extract can be great things to add on. Supplements for mood support, B vitamins, probiotics, fish oil, magnesium, turmeric can help with inflammation. And then serotonin support, St. John's wort or 5-HTP. Vitamin D is always in there for mood. SAMe is another one that a lot of people find benefit in feeling better when they've been feeling kind of low. I would say 5-HTP, St. John's wort, help with serotonin. Sometimes people are feeling anxious or they're feeling low, and it just depends, but those can help with both. PS stands for phosphatidylserine, and that helps with cortisol regulation. So if there's been a lot of stress, that can be a good one to help with a healthy stress response. Then we have nutrients for bone health. Now, remember, as I go through this, you don't need to supplement all of these. And oftentimes there's combination products where you get this all in one product. So you're just taking like, a couple capsules or something per day, but you're getting a combination of this. You can also pick and choose based on what your foods look like. And if you're getting plenty of these nutrients in your food, then, you can just supplement the things that you're not getting so much of. So we've got vitamins K1, K2, D, C, B12, folate, B6. You could just kind of take a multivitamin. In a multivitamin, we tend to not get quite enough. There may or may not be K2. D3 is usually pretty low. Calcium, magnesium may not be very high, but you may get some of these other like B vitamins you typically get in a multi, vitamin C. So it kind of just depends on the amounts you're trying to take in combination with what foods you're eating. But a multivitamin is a way to get around like taking all of these things separately, or getting a combination product like this Jarrow Bone Up has a lot of these nutrients in there in 3 capsules per day. There's calcium, a bunch of minerals, calcium, magnesium, strontium, zinc, copper. And then the reason that digestive enzymes and HCl are on here is because to absorb minerals, we need healthy gut function and we need sufficient stomach acid. Liver support and detox kind of goes back to supporting our gut and then supporting our liver and our detox pathways. Fermented foods, probiotics, and prebiotics are going to support our gut. Calcium D-glucarate supports a detox pathway. Chlorella and greens powders are also going to support liver detox function. Milk thistle helps our liver cells renew, essentially regenerate. And then we have NAC. I didn't put glutathione on here. That should be on here too, as well as garlic. Heart health. Definitely vitamin D, omega-3s, probiotics, magnesium, K2, K1, and then CoQ10. And then I added a few things, like if you're working on healthy blood pressure, arginine, beetroot can be helpful. For cholesterol balance, beta-sitosterol, that's missing an R in there, beta-sitosterol, polycosanol, maybe red yeast rice. And again, you want to check with your physician or your healthcare provider to make sure that none of these are contraindicated for what you're dealing with or what other medications you're on. I should say that in general as a disclaimer for this entire class. I need to add that at the beginning, is like, please take this information and speak about it with your healthcare provider, because if you're on medications or you have any conditions, you want to make sure that what you're taking isn't contraindicated and that it's supportive for your health. So definitely want to make sure to say that. For sleep, stress, and feeling calm. For sleep, we have valerian root, melatonin, magnesium, L-theanine, 5-HTP, lemon balm, passion flower, lavender. There's a supplement by Designs for Health I like called Insomnitol. It has nearly all of that in one product, so it's a good one for sleep. Here's some things for a healthy stress response. I mentioned phosphatidylserine earlier, magnesium, B vitamins, vitamin D. Then you can take these adaptogenic herbs by themselves, or you can get a combination of these. And these are all great options: ashwagandha, eleuthero, rhodiola. Here are some of my favorite products that we've talked about. And Karna is actually local. I keep this in office, so if you're curious, you can reach out to me about this. The reason I love it is because it's a liquid. It tastes kind of like a superfood juice. You keep it in the fridge, you drink an ounce a day, and it actually has like it has a good dose of calcium in it. It's got a good dose of magnesium. It's got 5,000 IU of vitamin D. It's got some gut support. It's got some mood, like nutrients that we need for neurotransmitters for healthy mood. It has some things that help with the healthy stress response, B vitamins. They're all in great forms. So, and it was created by an acupuncturist and a nurse. It's a really great product, and it just helps combine everything into one. So it reduces the amount of things people are taking. So that's an option that is local and a really great product. Catecholacalm over on the right is one that is great for calm mood throughout the day. So if we're feeling a lot of stress, that's a nice combo with some of those things we talked about. Omega Avail Ultra is an omega-3 supplement. It's great. There's lots of great omega-3 supplements out there, so I just threw that in as an option. And then if you are dealing with gut issues and you need a probiotic, I love Megaspore Biotic by Microbiome Labs. If you're dealing with like bloating or any sort of gut symptoms, I just start with this one because typically it's a good starting point while we work on what the root cause is for those other symptoms. And eventually, once those get improved, then usually other probiotics are pretty well tolerated. So this is a good one if you don't tolerate some of the other probiotics you've tried that are out there. All right, we made it right at 12:59. So thank you so much. Here is my website. If you have questions, there's my email, my phone number, my office number. If you're interested in getting extra support, if you're interested in therapy services or you're interested in nutrition services, you can always schedule a 20-minute time to jump on Zoom or the phone and just chat. I'm happy to answer questions. If I'm not what you're needing, I'm also just love connecting people with whoever they do need, so can give you a referral. But feel free to reach out if you have questions about this talk, or if you have preferences for future talks, let us know, let the library know, or me know, and we'll try to get those going. So thank you so much. And